and hide.
I'm going to mute.
Welcome, everybody, to our first Zoom meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And with that said, the Pledge of Allegiance, we'd like to start with that. And I do not have a flag anywhere handy here, so I'm just going to go ahead and recite. Please sing along. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And would like to start the meeting with a roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Emerson is absent. Commissioner Gutierrez?
Present.
Commissioner Lawman?
Here.
Commissioner Machado?
Here.
Commissioner Oblitz?
Here.
Commissioner Reisinger?
Here.
Commissioner Seibel?
Here.
I'd like to note that because Commissioner Emerson is absent, Commissioner Seibel will be a full voting member this evening.
I'm here too.
Thank you. Chair Jones, I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you.
We have our roll call, and at this point, I'll invite Lindsay to explain how the public can participate in this evening's agenda. Lindsay?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Viewers are welcome to provide public comment online through Zoom if they're watching through Zoom, or by telephone by calling 669-900-9128, and the meeting ID is 861-5448-9435 #. If you're watching the meeting through Zoom and you wish to provide public comment, you can select the hand raise feature if you select the participants key. If you're participating by telephone and you wish to provide public comment, please press *9 when the chair opens public comment period. When it's your time to speak, you'll hear a notification that you've been unmuted and you'll have 2 minutes to provide your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Are there any amendments to this evening's agenda?
There are none.
Great. And what we'd like to start with is the approval of the regular minutes of the March 12th, 2020 meeting. Would someone like to approve those minutes?
Move to approve the minutes. It's the last
Yes,
meeting.
I move to second.
Everyone?
Are
Aye.
we doing roll call votes?
Correct.
Sorry. You want to call the roll call vote, please?
Yes,
Lindsay?
please. Commissioner Gutierrez?
Aye.
Commissioner Lawman?
Same.
Commissioner Machado?
Aye.
Commissioner Oblitz?
Abstain.
Commissioner Reisinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Seibel?
Aye.
Chair Jones?
Aye. At this point, I would like to invite questions and answers from trustees to the staff. On tonight's agendas. I have one question. The public, I didn't see it posted on the website. I went to the city's website. Is that where it was posted, this meeting,
Mm-hmm.
for the public to be on?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any way that now everything is social, we can get it posted on like the Facebook page potentially, or anywhere that people can more readily get access to it?
That's a great question. And is that something we can do? Are we allowed to? You're muted.
Susan, you're muted.
Myself. I don't know if we can do that. I will check with the city clerk's office because whatever we're doing for all the boards and commissions and city council, we have to follow suit. So it is on the city's website, the agenda packet, and the way to participate is on there as well. The same way we would normally do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that and state that if the Library and Recreation Department would decide to use that on their social media, they would be able to do that.
Okay.
Can I comment on that or no?
I think it's a great idea. I think, you know, making it easier for people to join in and listen in, I'm all for it. I don't know how everybody else feels about it.
And I agree with you, Chair Jones. I think it's important, and I don't feel like people are necessarily going to our website to look to find an avenue to comment, but if it, you know, pops up on Facebook, you know, our job is to represent the public and give comment, and I would love to include as many people as possible. And I think while Zoom has its limitations, it's also really wonderful for those people who, you know, don't want to come down on an evening or can pop in for a moment for community comments. So I agree. If we can make it work, it would be wonderful. But I also understand that there are restrictions.
It's a great idea. I'd like to open up for public comment. I don't see any public participants, but this may not show at all. Lindsay, it shows 11. There are 11 of us, so that means there's nobody else is on. Is that correct?
That is correct. There are 0 attendees present.
Okay, so I guess we'll have no public comments. Chair would like to close the public comment and request staff to respond to questions raised during public comments. So there were no public comments, so staff cannot respond to any questions. We do not need a motion and a second, and we don't need a roll call because there was nothing to be voted on or talked about or discussed during the public comment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. At this point, meeting open to the public, it says introductions, awards, recognitions, and presentations. Do we have anything under that, or do I skip over that?
We don't have anything under introductions, awards, or recognitions tonight, except for introducing Lindsay, and I think you all have met her.
Welcome. Public comment, chairs opens, public comment, matters before the commission. We have the agenda packet. If you, hopefully everybody read it. It was an eyeful, pretty much, and I hope you guys took the time to read through it because it was quite drastic from what we had before. We had, I guess, 1 page, 2 pages, and now it's a pretty thought out process of protecting the city, protecting the assets of the city, I believe, and quite a change. What I didn't see, and I did want to ask about, if this is the time to do it, is the fee structure. Is that changing at all?
So, Chair, if we could introduce the item first and let Catherine present it, I think that will,
Okay.
that will be helpful.
Great.
Just to answer your question, because I don't want you to have to wait till after it, it is a lot of information. Tonight really is about the policies and procedures. There's 2 components to it that she's going to elaborate on. One existed, but it was, as you can see, 1 piece of paper for all the facilities. And it really didn't answer the questions that people ask us, and it didn't cover a lot of information that they really needed. The other one's a brand new process. Fees are a completely separate issue, and we are going through a master fee schedule update right now. And there will be a point where the recommendations of that process will be coming forward to the Park and Rec Commission for their review and comment and feedback.
Great.
Okay. All right. I'd like to introduce Catherine Kufa. She is our Assistant Library and Recreation Director. She oversees Recreation and Child Care Division. In the interim, what she's also been doing is our management analyst job. And during this shelter in place, she has been serving as the section chair for ops. And most recently, as of yesterday, was appointed to be the project manager for the canal area because there is quite a bit of concern of issues and services that need to be addressed down there. So she's wearing multiple hats that don't fit in that little square that you're looking at. So I'd like to introduce Catherine.
Congratulations on your appointment.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair Jones and Susan. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. We've got a presentation. Um, all right, is everybody able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, Susan already kind of gave a little bit of an overview, but today our big presentation is about our facility rental reservations, policies and procedures, and our ongoing facility rental process. So it's a mouthful, but I will probably be saying it a lot. So just a little bit of background on this process. I think as you kind of could tell, it's been a while since our policies and procedures were last updated. The last update was in 2013. Since then, we've seen definitely changes in best practices in facility rentals and management. We've also experienced changes in our own rental, kind of in the trends in renting our own facilities, and have heard from our renters that a more robust policy would be appreciated. Additionally, our original rental policies and procedures were really designed for kind of one-off or short-term rentals. And over the years, we've been seeing an increasing number of groups wanting to rent our facilities on a monthly or even weekly basis. So this is groups, we've got a number of faith-based groups, AA, Toastmasters, some recreational program providers. And so kind of all of these factors combined to convince us that this was a good time to take a look at our facility policies and to do a comprehensive update. And one thing I want to mention is today we're really focusing on our facility rentals, but kind of in the future we are going to also be looking at our field and our park and picnic rentals as well. So as we kind of embarked on this rental policy update, we had a few goals or objectives in mind when we were kind of doing this design process. So, we wanted to align with current best practices in facility management. We also wanted to ensure the safety of those using the facility, both the renters and the staff, and the facility itself. We wanted to make sure that we were reducing the likelihood of damage to city assets. We also wanted to protect both the city and the renters from liability and insurance issues. And last but definitely not least, we wanted to make sure that groups had fair and equal access to facility use through kind of a really transparent process. So in this, as we were doing this update, we looked to neighboring agencies to identify best practices. We also did a pretty comprehensive internal review process to design these policies and procedures. So I'm going to start today's presentation focusing on the facility rental reservation policies and procedures document. So this is the one that has the rules for our short-term or one-off reservation or run-off rentals. So for this, as Chair Jones mentioned, this is quite a long document. So I'm going to focus the presentation on the things that have changed from our old policy document to our new policy document. And so in some of these instances, these are changes to policy and practice, and some of these are just documenting kind of existing practices that weren't articulated in our former one-page document. So there's been a number of updates in different areas. I've tried to kind of clump them for ease of processing. And the first is changes to the reservation process. So these first two bullets on the slide are not actually changes from current practices. It's just articulating what we've already been doing. So one is we clarified that the name on the contract must match the name on the insurance and payments. We also articulated how the city is prioritizing simultaneous requests. This final bullet is a change in policy. And we are reducing the waiting period for advanced reservations just for the classrooms only, kind of the smaller rooms, from 1 year to 6 months. So the idea behind this is that it gives the city more flexibility in programming these classrooms. It also allows more time for our big auditorium, gymnasium, multi-room rentals to come in. And we also find that classroom rentals usually are not booked as far in advance as your big kind of life event, full facility rentals. The next area that we've made some changes is in fee collection. So first, we're proposing to change the due date for fees from 45 days prior to the event to 6 months prior to the event. And so our goal here is to really make sure that in the case of a cancellation, the city has enough time to rebook the facility. We found that 45 days was really not a sufficient amount of time. We're also changing the refund policy. Again, one of the goals here is to protect the city from last minute cancellations. So the city's current policy is that if the deposit is retained if a renter cancels the contract at any time. So this was kind of creating a reverse incentive for it was more beneficial for someone to do a no-show than to tell us they were canceling the reservation. Because if they did a no-show, they got their deposit back, but if they canceled, we retained their deposit. So we realized there was a kind of a reverse incentive that we wanted to fix here. And then finally, this fee structure aligns with what both kind of Novato and Mill Valley are doing with their facilities. So we have some, we have similar renters, and we thought it would be helpful to have a similar structure to those neighboring agencies. So basically, if you cancel more than 6 months out, the rental fee is returned, although you probably haven't paid it yet, and we retain the deposit. If you cancel within 3 to 6 months, we retain the deposit and 50% of the rental fees. If you cancel with 3 months or less, we return the deposit and retain the fees. So the final area where we're proposing changes is kind of in general rental policies. Some of these changes were to limit the liability of the city in certain scenarios outside of our control. So we added a clause around natural disasters, power outages, public health crises, that if, in these events, we had to cancel a reservation, we would return any rental fees, but the city would not be held liable for any kind of additional financial implications of canceling that event. We also gave the city the ability to cancel an event if it's larger or different than represented on the application form. And we clarified when security is required for a rental. So our previous policy had security required for all major events, which is a little bit vague and open to interpretation. So our proposed policy is very specific about when security will be required and kind of what those factors are. And that includes when admissions fees are charged, when alcohol is served or sold, when there's amplified sound, when there are high-risk activities, or when there's parties or special events that take place during non-business hours. And then we also added just some kind of industry standard policies that were missing from our current policy, things around kitchen use, amplified sound, chemical sensitivity. I think these were things that we were enforcing already, but that needed to be clearly stated in the policies. So those were kind of the big changes for these short-term or one-off rentals. So now I'm going to move on to the ongoing rental process. So this is the policies and procedures for ongoing rentals that are more than 12 times per year. So this is a brand new process for us, and this is something we've found over time. We've been getting more of these requests. So we wanted to create a process that was transparent and equitable, and kind of ensured a clear process and approach to make sure that groups had an equal access to highly desirable dates and times throughout the year. So we came up with the process that was outlined in this meeting packet, and this is kind of the timeline on this slide. It's going to be an annual process with groups submit. The groups submit in November for the subsequent year. So this coming November, December 2020, they'll be submitting for calendar year 2022. So the applications are going to be accepted from November to December 15th. They'll be reviewed by city staff, and then applicants will be informed of the status of their application by January 15th. Staff will then work with the renters to develop a contract, and a template of what that contract and the types of requirements that the city has is included in the packet that was provided to you and will be available for all applicants prior to submitting their application. So hopefully that contract development will be a smooth process. And then agreements will be finalized by March 15th for the following year. One of the other kind of critical pieces of this process was determining how the city was going to prioritize the different requests. So this slide outlines how we'll be prioritizing. So San Rafael-based nonprofits will get first priority. San Rafael residents will get second priority. Non-San Rafael-based nonprofits will get third priority. And then business or commercial use will be kind of the last priority. And it's important to note that the only commercial groups that provide recreational or social support services will be considered eligible for this ongoing rental program. So if there's still more than one group in the same category that is looking for the same dates and times, we're going to prioritize those that provide recreational and/or social support programs, the programs and events that are free to participants or don't generate revenue, and those that serve a higher number of residents. For anyone that doesn't get their first choice of time slot, we will be trying to work with them to see if they could be accommodated at another time. So beyond this new process, these ongoing rentals will be subject to pretty much the same policies as the short-term rentals, which we just discussed. So I think that was a lot of information there. And I'm going to open it up to any questions. Or I think we've got I think Chair Jones has a script for this.
I have a script for everything. I would like to invite questions from the commissioners to staff. And would you like to go around the circle here, or how do you want to do that?
If you could, Chair Jones, call everyone by name, as everyone's circle is different depending on their computers.
Okay, Commissioner Gutierrez.
I had a question about the ongoing rentals. I'm assuming, based on the timeline, that they do come to you that early. Is that typical for the ongoing groups to come a little over a year in advance?
So for our auditorium and our larger rentals, we do accept those a year in advance, and that is often when they get booked. So the idea was to slot those ongoing rentals in before it's opened up to anyone can come and take it, because it is an ongoing kind of different type of relationship with those renters. So we want to be able to get them in. And I would say, most of them do know that far in advance that they want to come up to us. There may be cases where new people come in or recognize that or find us, and if we have space, we will allow that to come in the middle of the year, and then they'll jump into the kind of the process the next time around. But they just, they'll have to fit around whatever rentals we already have booked.
Got it. Yeah, looks great. Seems overdue. Thanks.
Commissioner Machado.
So question would be, how much is the deposit? Is it a certain percentage of the fee?
No, it's set for each facility, and so I think our larger rentals like the auditorium and the multi-purpose room at Borough and Falkirk are $500, and then the smaller classrooms are $100 each. I believe that's where they're at right now. That we'll be coming with that with the fee update as well. That'll be part of that.
Okay. And do nonprofits get a break in regards to rentals, or is it the same across the board?
Yeah, our fee schedule has different tiers for nonprofits, and then private rentals and nonprofit fundraisers are kind of a higher tier, and then commercial groups are the next tier up. And then within that, we also have discounts for residents versus non-residents.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Seibel.
Yeah, could you speak a little more, just because I'm not aware of what the policy was initially prior to being changed, about the amplified sound? Because I know in Mill Valley that was and continues to be a huge deal that has roused community groups to really push back against the department there.
So Susan might be able, Susan's got a better grasp on our exact, it's actually a little bit different for each of our facilities. And this is one of those ones where we actually had like a separate document with our noise policy. So this isn't a change, it's just putting it all into one place and making sure people have access to it ahead of time. But Susan's worked a lot on the noise policy, so I'll let her talk more to that.
Sure, it's a really good question. When I first got here, we had events we'll use the San Rafael Community Center. It has the largest auditorium, therefore it can support the largest events indoors. So when I first got here, the events were allowed to go to 12 midnight and people had to vacate the facility at 1 o'clock on Friday, Saturday nights. Well, our sound ordinance, our noise ordinance, if you look at the Muni code, basically says Sunday through Thursday, the music needs to be off around 9 o'clock, unless by permit. So we had that. And then on Friday and Saturday night, noise had to be off by 10 p.m. Well, they definitely were not aligned with what we were allowing to go on here. And telling people to turn off their music at 10 if they were still dancing till 12 was problematic. So we got permission to do a grandfather kind of period in this last year where everybody who had already booked something was allowed to go to that time. But all the new rentals, we started shifting. So now all of our rentals end accordingly to the sound, kind of the noise ordinance time. And then they have an hour after that to vacate the facility and leave. So we were concerned at the time, and I won't belabor it, but we were concerned at the time that when we shifted all these hours, we won't get any rentals. Gosh, what's going to happen? And we never had that problem until now when we're closed. So it worked just fine. So I'm glad you asked that, because our poor neighbors around Gersel Park would tell you that it was, they could hear every single thing going on after 10 o'clock, and it was really problematic. So it was something that we were able to accommodate.
Awesome. Well, great job. Thank you.
Commissioner Reisinger.
Can you please give me some examples of the ongoing rentals that you're describing?
Yeah, sure. So we have a number of faith-based groups that rent our facilities every Sunday or some Saturdays. AA is another big one that rents the San Rafael Community Center. I believe it's every Tuesday. Toastmasters rents out Falkirk. We have a dog rental, a dog obedience class that rents out Terra Linda. We've got a kind of neighborhood bonsai group that also rents out Terra Linda. So those are, and we have quite a few faith-based groups.
And right now with the COVID stuff and the switching, and I apologize, I'm more familiar with Contra Costa County orders at this moment. Are you allowed to do indoor rentals?
No.
So this is something that would take effect eventually once stuff opens. Okay.
Yeah, so we've been working on this for a number of months. We probably would have brought this to you earlier had COVID not happened.
Oh no, I'm right there with you. And what, well, I mean, like type of outdoor rentals, are there anyone coming to you guys for outdoor rentals to be creative, to try to revenue generate right now during the crazy COVID end of fall, summer, or end of summer being a fall stuff?
Yeah, so we probably back in April, I think it was, when we started seeing that outdoor recreation classes were going to be allowed. We kind of put together a very brief temporary outdoor park rental policy, and we can send you a link to that. It's on our website for recreation gyms, yoga studios to rent certain designated kind of grass or blacktop areas within the city. It's been interesting because there was a period where everyone was told that gyms were going to be able to open back up. So we initially kind of in April had a lot of, or maybe it was May, all the months are blending together, but we had a lot of inquiries and interest. And then as soon as they said gyms were going to be opened up, no one followed through. And then that didn't happen. So we are starting to see, we are getting more folks inquiring about that, and a few that are actually kind of going through to booking out the parks.
Catherine
That's
is,
actually great. Sorry, go
um,
ahead, Susan.
just wanted to give you a little bit more information. Catherine's being very modest. We got inquiries, and within 72 hours, she had a policy and a procedure for it and had it up on our website. And I sent you a lot of information. I know I was sending you guys gobs of information, and one of them included the link to the whole thing, but I'll be glad to send it to you. But it was remarkable how fast that she and her staff put that together. And the whole point was to support the business communities that couldn't operate their yoga and martial arts, etc. And so it's been fantastic, and other agencies have been calling us.
Chair Jones, would you?
I had to brag.
Pardon me?
Would you
But
mind?
isn't it still my turn?
I want to piggyback on your question.
I'm not done.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can you, and this might be a question better suited for the city attorney, but Susan, you might know this. So the county has set up a hotline for businesses that are not conducting their business on the basis of the current health and safety orders. So if you are doing a rental, let's say an outdoor rental for a youth soccer camp that that group wants to come in and use one of the fields, and somebody sees that group not running in a manner that is within the guidelines that the county has laid out currently, is the city then subject to that penalty if somebody hits them with that?
So I'm going to briefly answer that and give it to Catherine, because when these programs were developed, along with our contract camps and our childcare programs that our contractors are providing, there are requirements that we have them sign to adhere to in order for us to rent them space. So instead of just renting them like it's a standalone, like a typical rental would be, there's a whole site protection plan that they have to adhere by. There's a whole understanding of COVID. And if they should not adhere to it, then they lose their rental. But I want to make sure Catherine answers that a little bit more, but all that, those policies and procedures and all the documents that they have to sign were created.
Yeah, no, I mean, Susan, I think you got it right. We require each of our renters to complete a site protection plan, which is kind of the form that the county has created. They also sign, as Susan said, kind of waivers saying they're going to abide by these kind of any updated social distancing protocols, and that if they don't, we'll be terminating their rental. So I think you're right that probably the city attorney would be the ultimate decider on that, but we did run this whole process through the city attorney's office, and they felt comfortable with the level of risk, and that, I think they felt that the city was doing everything that could be reasonably expected to ensure that these are being run safely.
So I had one more question.
And you still have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Chair Jones, appreciate that. Just a question of, being in the park and rec industry, I get it. Our rental person was laid off because no one's renting right now. You can't be indoors. You don't know about outdoors, what's happening. I'm just wondering how much of the total budget, like percentage wise, is rentals? Like the conversation that we're having tonight, how impactful is it? Is it like this much, like, I mean, I know you can't judge my fingers, but like, how does it matter? And with that, I think I speak for all of our commissioners, like we want to be impactful and helpful and figure out what we're doing, but just not sure what's going on, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't off the top of my head know what percentage our facility rental is of revenue. It is significant. So and I think Susan's going to speak a little bit more about budget impacts of COVID and everything later. You know, rentals are not the only area where we're seeing budget impacts. You know, we can't run indoor classes, and our aquatics are at a much lower capacity than we would normally run. So, yeah, I mean, rentals are not the only area where we're feeling the financial impact of COVID. And Susan might have me come back and say a little bit more during later. But I think we're going to talk about kind of that more during the director's report. Correct me if I'm wrong, Susan.
You are correct.
And I don't mean it as a setup. I just mean as,
Right.
you know, COVID right now is dictating everything we do. And like, I'm just gonna be very clear, in the city of Walnut Creek, which the city of Santa Fe is not the city of Walnut Creek, but like our rental person was laid off. Someone who's worked there for 6 years, he was let go because no one's renting, and it's not gonna happen. And he did outdoor and indoor. So I'm just curious about what the impact of our conversation is tonight is gonna be for kind of where it goes.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah, and I think it's talking about budget is complicated for particularly for recreation, because we do generate quite a bit of revenue, but we also have a lot of expenses that are tied to our programs. We have a lot of temp staff that we aren't able to bring back right now. You know, normally we have 100 lifeguards, and I think right now we've got 15 or something like that. So, you know,
and I will speak to, I went swimming 7 times, I think, since it opened. And I was there when it was opening, like online, finding my reservation things, and your lifeguards, those 17 lifeguards that you have or whatever they are, they're wonderful. And thank you for doing that as a side note. So that's wonderful.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, Susan will talk more about this, but, and kind of the, you know, the budget impacts and the staffing impacts of, you know, across the city. So I'll leave it for that. We can get more into it then.
Commissioner Lauman.
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Commissioner Oblitz.
Talk about a comprehensive report. Thank you so much. I had just a couple quick things. You mentioned Novato and Mill Valley were surveyed or in some way reviewed. Were there other jurisdictions in the county that we used as the basis for our changes?
Those were the primary ones that we looked at in terms of they were kind of closer in size to San Rafael and just kind of a number of facilities. I can't, to be honest, at the moment, I can't even, it was a while ago, I can't even really remember. Susan, I think we pulled.
Yeah, we looked at some others. Yeah, we looked at some other cities as well. I mean, actually, Kat works for a really great agency. And there's quite a few excellent agencies out there. But after reviewing all of them, we decided to stick with the 2 closest to us, because honestly, the renters that come to us are usually comparing us with Mill Valley and Novato as far as this is the demographic, or excuse me, this is the region that they're looking at. And to make it easier for people to have them be more in alignment with something here rather than Contra Costa County or Alameda seemed to make more sense.
Absolutely.
And now that I'm thinking back to it, I think I did look at the Ranch and Corte Madera and Larkspur, but Mill Valley and Novato really had kind of the most comprehensive documents.
I found that Corte Madera is really getting their act together with respect to parks management and especially tennis courts and some other things going on there. In the past, there's been a real inconsistent policy about jumpy rooms. Has that been addressed and clarified for use of jumpy rooms, these inflatable rented devices for typically in the parks?
Yeah, so this set of documents really just focuses on our indoor rentals, and we're going to come back to you with park rentals, and I will make sure that that's included in those policies.
Okay. And then with respect to ongoing response to the pandemic, I think the city has really been on it, and the amount of communications, email and other communications from the city has been extraordinary. And it sounds as if you've incorporated some lessons learned about the pandemic into your documents and forms and policies and things. So that sounds really good.
Yep, we're all getting a lot of experience with emergencies the past
Right,
12
thanks
months.
again.
Thank you. My questions actually have all been answered as well. I do have one question though. I was reading through everything. Kitchens are not available as standalone rentals. Has anyone looked at renting those out as a pop-up kitchen? I know they're very popular in San Francisco for a lot of the food trucks all have need to produce their foods in some type of commercial kitchen. Might be a money generator. I don't know. Is there some reason why we don't rent those out to standalones?
Do you want
Yes,
to take that, Susan?
I'll be glad to. They do not pass environmental health standards for Marin County. So what they do pass is for a caterer to come and use it as a mini prep or a warming kitchen, but they do not satisfy the requirements for a commercial kitchen. We thought that in the beginning, that was validated for us. So it used to be offered and we took it off because honestly, if we had people come in and use it, they would be in violation. So we don't want anybody to be in that situation, and we sure don't want to be.
Absolutely. I was just thinking of ways to generate revenue, and definitely a kitchen. Too bad. Yes, Commissioner Reisinger.
So this is so super sad, but also like kind of awesome. In that, so I work for the City of Walnut Creek Arts and Recreation Department. We are so striving to generate revenue, not to bring them into here, but we laid off a third of the Arts and Recreation Department. A third of the full-time department was laid off. But that aside, we are doing a smile.amazon account. We're doing affiliate links for supplies for virtual classes. Like if a virtual class is going to do paint stuff, they can order it through this affiliate link. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if the city of Center felt the same rules apply or not, but like if we can get as creative as possible, I know that I think the whole commission would support anything we can do to support the department. So I apologize. It's a little random, but at the same time, like, it's reality.
It is. It really is. And thanks for that comment, really. Would like to know if there's any additional comments. Thank you so much. I would
Actually, I did have one.
sure.
In that we were just off topic a bit. I happened to go by Parkside Childcare today at 5 o'clock and was surprised to see children outside in the playground at Parkside. I wonder if the director has any updates for me.
Sure. And you know what? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about COVID-related issues and budget. And so I'll be glad to answer this, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that I will give you ample opportunity to ask some questions about budget and COVID and all that as well later. But to answer your question, the cohorts that are in Parkside right now are allowed to use, those groups that are there are allowed to use certain shared equipment as long as it's sanitized between uses. It's very similar to the pool when we have user groups go in there and utilize the pool. Once they leave, it's sanitized. So we have a couple of cohorts over at Parkside. They are in separate rooms. They do not share equipment. When they go to use that playground, it is sanitized, but those are the only groups that are allowed to use it. And I think it's like the only playground besides the other childcare sites that we have in our day camp sites that have a playground that they can utilize.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I was just pleasantly surprised to see the facility in use after quite an absence. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Anything else, commissioners? And if not, I'd like to request a motion to approve moving this forward to City Council. As
So
is.
moved.
So moved. Second,
I'll second.
please call a roll call.
Can I get clarification on who moved?
Mark Machado.
Thank you. And then also just to note for the record, there are no members of the public present for public comment as well.
Mm.
And Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawman,
Yes.
Commissioner Machado,
Aye.
Commissioner Oblitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Reisinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Seibel,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Thank you very much. That moves forward, and really thanks for all your hard work on that. That must have just been quite a chore going from the one page, and it really got me. There was just one page that we used and really out of date. So glad that we are moving into the 21st century here with that. Our next item is brief reports from any meetings, conferences, and/or seminars attended by commission members. And again, I'll go around my circle on the screen and call you out if you have anything to include here. Commissioner Gutierrez.
I haven't, but my kids did. They went to camp in June and early July at the Santa Fe Community Center. It was great. It was a sort of last minute change from a regular camp to a 3-week camp that met the county guidelines for summer camps. And the staff did a great job getting the people who had already signed up for the 3-week camp. And it was great. My kids had a blast. They were exhausted at the end of the day. I have no idea what they did in there.
That's okay.
They don't tell me things, but they seemed to have a great time. They knew there was a blood drive going on, and they thought that was fascinating. And I just want to thank the staff for putting it together. I already told Catherine that, but it was a lifesaver because I don't know what else we would have done those first few weeks while work was not quiet. So it was great. And I think my kid made that little Friday flyer in the background of one of the pictures.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lauman?
Nothing.
Nothing? Thank you. Commissioner Machado?
I don't have anything.
Thank you. Commissioner Reisinger? Thank you. Commissioner Seibel?
Nothing from me.
Thank you. Commissioner Oblitz?
Nothing additional. Thanks.
Thank you. And I have been attending my Zoom meetings with the 2040 plan. Once the meetings were canceled and they put us all into certain committees to get everything done. We've just finished the San Rafael Plan 2040 is done and being written, very exciting, and being sent to, I believe it goes to council next to vote on, but to look at. But it was quite a process. It was a 2-year process, and we got something out of it, and I'm going to let Susan explain what that is, because I was going to send an email and I decided not to. But very, very exciting, I think, for us. But anyway, the plan that has been worked on for the past 2 years, that's done. I believe I'm done with that committee and look forward to moving on. And Susan, if you wouldn't mind, well, that'll come, I guess, in your staff comments then, correct? Yes, okay. Is there any other reports or comments out there? Did anybody attend the one of the Thursday night San Rafael 4th Street walk around, dine arounds? Did you?
I've attended all of them, including this evening's. And now that EDA and the Business Improvement District has now expanded, I believe, as of last week to include Friday nights.
Oh,
Thursday,
really? That's great
Thursday
news.
and Friday under the lights. And I'm pleasantly pleased to report that people are playing by the rules. Social distancing, mask, hand sanitizer,
Mhm.
it's all good. And I think the cooperative effort between the chamber, the BID, city, and Brian Auger and his staff has really been great. And on a quick segue, I talked to Brian today. He's just recovering from another shoulder surgery, and he hopes to be back at work the next day or so, and he's doing well. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Reisinger? You attended one?
Yes, I know. I attended a couple of them,
Oh,
and
great.
they're wonderful. It's so great. They've now like extended them through the extra latitude area, if you will, of like, because they were originally, you had to stop on 4th Street and you couldn't walk because they were going to drive through. But now you're allowed to like walk the whole way. I will say though that I had lunch after the Falkirk succulent sale for the Master Gardeners, which was wonderful. The Falkirk sale, like I literally got there like 8:20 and everything was sold out. I was like, sorry, at 8, what happened? But it was amazing. There was the whole parking lot was full, and I had to park like super far down and like use my Park Mobile app, and it was great. Still, after that, I went back and like talked to Bogey's dining area, Bogey's Diner, if you will, and he was talking about how the van parks on C Street, if that's C Street, I don't know, Catherine and Susan tell me, but anyways, he was complaining because like the van parks for some other business that like makes it look as if it's not like past the area. And I came today, I was there before I came here, and it did look as if that food truck was like blocking the area for the end of the food truck and the whole like, you know, just inclusive area. You know, I worked in Park and Rec. You can't please everybody, but still, like, it was wonderful. It's great. But if I don't know who's in charge of this, you guys or community development or who knows like what it is, but like the food truck, if it could not like cut off the road, I agree. It should move back to support. And like the guy was even like, we're giving $5 back to the like community rec, and I was like, community rec? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. And it was interesting. It was great. It's been great. Everything's been great. We're just, you know, working out a few little nuances.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really is. I've enjoyed it as well. Any other comments? We move on to our last, but certainly most important, our illustrious director, and the staff comments.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. It's really been wonderful seeing all of you after all this time. It's kind of lonely. I was here actually by myself for a good portion of the last 3 or 4 months. We had other staff that would come in the building when I wasn't here, but it's a lot nicer to have some of these rooms filled with, whether it's a blood drive or the camp cohorts are here. It's a lot nicer having the center being used somewhat for its intended purposes instead of just a giant office for me. So anyway, so I sent you I received a couple of inquiries from some of you in regards to the budget, and I figured, you know what, I know I sent you a lot of information, but you were all busy, and I thought I would just highlight the things that I assumed by what I heard was the most important to you. So Measure A, in the memo I sent you, I talked a little bit about Measure A. I know I've sent this information to you before, but I will just give you a snippet. So the allocation that we received from the county this year was reduced by 25% because they believe that they are going to receive less sales tax and TUT therefore it's passed through to the other cities and our allocation is smaller. To put that in perspective, our last year allocation was just over 486,000, and this year it'll be 365. Okay, so as you know, in prior years, that amount of money was allocated in a variety of ways: park maintenance, open space preservation, as well as security, which meant fire and PD and park maintenance. And then there was whatever was left over, quite honestly, was used for capital improvement projects for parks. Well, we might have gotten a reduced allocation, but because of the fire tax that everybody refers to passed, a lot of those allocations were identified that they could be moved and funded through other funding sources such as that. So the $365,000 is purely going to be used to support park maintenance and capital park improvements. So that's great news. So of that 365, 155,000 is going to be used for vegetation management and park maintenance. The remainder of it is going to be used for a park and recreation master plan that you wanted as part of the general plan update. And if there's any money left over, it would be identified and used to support some of the projects that have been on the list all along. But just to remind everybody, the reason why everybody wanted that park and rec master plan, we have many projects that the commission has completed, and we had about 10 that are kind of vying for competition of kind of the same magnitude, but really no way of saying which one is more important, because quite honestly, looking at that list, they're all really important. So this master plan will give the commission a great tool to work with the community to identify the deficiencies in the city, the standards of maintenance that they want to see, as well as identify new projects that will support the community going forward. Because as we say, what we have now is not necessarily what the community is going to want in the future. What we have now is based on former generations. So looking forward, what are the families of San Rafael in the future going to want? So that's exciting. I just wanted to pause and ask if there was any questions about Measure A. I know, super exciting. I'm really excited.
How long will, I have a question.
Sure.
To interrupt. How long does Measure A last?
So Measure A, if I remember correctly, expires in a couple of years, but the county is already working on putting it on the ballot to renew it. So that is
at the same rate, or do we know yet?
I think that's their expectation right now. I know a lot of different cities and agencies are looking at quarter percent sales tax initiatives, and so I think they're still focused on the same amount.
And what impact would that have if it did not pass on the maintenance of our parks?
Well, right now, for the past almost 9 years, Parks has been utilizing about 150,000, give or take. So it is significant.
That is significant.
You always need more money to raise the baby than to have it, right? So maintenance is forever. Building it is one time. So maintenance is always very, very important. So it would be a blow. So next, I just want to make sure I'm giving you. So
Susan, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure, of course you can.
Stacy, did you say that the allocation that you were just talking about is for 2 years?
No, it's for this 1 year.
It's only for 1 year. Okay.
So usually in March, we get our allocation. This year it was, well, everybody knows everything took on a whole different timeline this year. So we didn't receive our allocation to the end of April because the county wanted to have a better understanding of the sales tax and what their quarter estimates were going to be. So they waited until mid to late April to release that until after the first quarter had come in. And already the sales tax was beginning to dip in the last 2 weeks of March. So as a conservative estimate, they basically told everybody that they were going to reduce their allocations by 25%. It could be more. It could be more, but at this point they said 25, and that's what we budgeted for. We wanted to be conservative as well.
Yes. Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So is that why because in that attachment you sent, the SERP or CERP, they're suggesting they're expecting a 14% reduction to the city's general fund budget, but then when I read your memo, it said 25%. Is that sort of the discrepancy? Is those are different sort of funds, or?
Yes, yes, thank you. Measure A comes from the county. And
Mhm.
so Measure A said that they were going to reduce our allocation, everyone's allocation in the county by 25%. The budget and the COVID economic recovery plan that I'm going to just touch on is different, and it has to do with the city's sales tax and TUT tax and other revenues and fees that we're expecting.
Thanks.
So it's two different sources. A lot of it has to do with sales tax though, so they both have that in common. Okay, so talking a little bit about the city budget. So beginning in April and in May, the city started taking quick steps to identify what the shortfall was going to be in the immediate and in the future. And I still think that we're discovering what the future really is. But at that point, they went to the city council, and the recommendation was to do a variety of things. And if you look at that little table in that memo that I gave you, I'll kind of go through these. These are the measures that they had the city council review and make a decision on whether they wanted us to move ahead with, and they did. So quick action on the city's part. So what they did was, the first step was the hiring freeze of all vacant positions. Now, to give you an idea what that means is Ashley took the position, as you know, with the Court of Madera, so that now is frozen. In the library, unfortunately, they have 7 positions that were vacant at the time. They were in the process of recruiting and they're frozen. So that accounts for quite a bit of employees. That $1.4 million is what it nets. The second program that the city presented to the city council was a voluntary retirement separation program. There were a few people that took advantage of that in our department. There are 2 people in childcare, and 1 person who has announced his retirement. Brian Auger is retiring. They took advantage of that opportunity, and they will be retiring, but there are several people in citywide that are taking advantage of that opportunity. That netted a savings of $600,000. The reason why it nets $600,000, because there was an incentive attached to it, is once they retire, those positions then become frozen too. The only one that's not becoming, I think there's either 1 or 2 positions in safety, which means either law enforcement or fire. They're not affected by the freezes, so they are going to be recruiting for those positions. Okay, then the furloughs. So then the third step of this was to ask the council to consider furloughs for all staff. Now, there are some variances on this, on how it impacts different union groups. I'm not going to get into that level of detail. I can give you the staff report, but I think I gave you the link before. It's a pretty hefty packet, so be prepared. If you want to download it, walk away, go eat dinner, exercise, do what you need, come back, see if it's still downloading. But the furloughs really are non-safety individuals, directors on down, everybody. And what that equates to is 13 days where the city will be closed except for emergency and essential services, which equates to a 5% compensation reduction of all staff. Okay. So that's how they're doing it. And I can give you the dates. There are general dates that were provided to everyone, but there are some nuances for some of us in different services because we're open to the public that we can't really be closed, like childcare is not going to be furloughed, but we have some other things that we need to have our facilities open or people can't utilize them if they're allowed to be open. Additional budget reductions, and I think this really speaks to what Kat was asking earlier of kind of where are these budget cuts. So the other reduction was the city stated that it was going to basically have a $12 million shortfall, okay? And so it came up with all these action steps to come up with that $12 million basically in savings to offset that loss. So it identified a $4.2 million budget reduction citywide, all departments, so even safety. So we, all staff, all the department heads submitted a 2.5, 2.5, a 5%, and 10% tier budget reduction scenarios to be considered. It was not a one size fits all. Some cities, as people are familiar with, often will say everybody's getting cut by 10% or 20. That is not how they did it. They wanted to have 3 different tier steps for every department and to understand the impacts of what those budget reductions would affect. Recreation and childcare did not get reduced at all at this point, and I will come back to that. The library was reduced by 2.5% of their general fund budget. They also have a Measure D parcel tax that helps fund them. That was not touched, obviously, but their cut was $76,000 of a $3.1 million budget. So they were very fortunate, and the reason why they only took 2.5% is, again, they have 7 vacant positions, which quite honestly generates a lot of money in savings. Recreation and childcare have not been reduced at this point. Childcare is a self-sufficient operation, and if it is allowed to continue to operate in a way that it can recoup its costs, then it will be fine. And we can touch on that in a second. Recreation, the city management has taken a very strategic approach to us. You have all heard what Kat shared with you. I can share numerous cities. I can tell you to go look at Vista, Healdsburg, Napa, San Jose, Gilroy. I can tell you all the departments that are, in some cases are being reduced, some cases are being obliterated, to be honest. They did not take that approach with us. They know that we are really good at basically recouping our costs, generating revenue, and they are on a wait and see to see what we're going to be able to open before they make any type of step towards reducing any of our staff or services. In the meantime, and that kind of why Catherine and some other of her staff went right out there as fast as they could to find other ways to use our facilities per health orders and being able to bring in revenue to sustain us until that time. So that is why we are renting out every square inch that we have. I'm wearing a sandwich board every day. Whatever you want, we'll figure out a way. But we are running childcare and day camps at every single one of our community centers and Falkirk. All of our childcare centers are operating per code, which means cohorts of 12 for 3 weeks. We have volleyball camp over at Borough Community Center. They're running for 3 weeks. So, and we have aquatics operating limited services, which, as Kat pointed out, lap swim and rec swim, and they are booked solid. So we are doing everything we can. One of the saving graces right now is we are operating only on full-time staff. Our temp staff have only been brought in the capacity that they were needed to provide services like lifeguards, or if they needed to support childcare or day camps. Otherwise, it's just us. So when I say it's just us, I think some of you know Steve Mason. It's him right now over at the Borough Center. Darcy is up at Falkirk. So we've got 1 or 2 people at each place, and that's where we're really saving the money. Our temp staff have been off since March 17th. So we're not spending a whole lot either. So, and then finally, the last 2 items that the city kind of bridged the gap of the $12 million was one-time funds, which are any kind of savings from last fiscal year, which was up to June 30th, which means all that temp staff that we weren't paying for, any of those savings, they grabbed that, and that was 1.1 million. And then they used the city's reserves. And they use 2.5% over 2 years, which is comes up to 3.7, almost $3.8 million to get to that 12 million. And that's how they bridged it. Now, next month, if all of a sudden they say that we're doing a shelter in place and no services can happen anymore and the facilities are shut down, it could be a different thing that we're talking about. But right now we are as whole as we can be. And we are doing everything that we can to stay afloat. We are getting reimbursed in some capacity for our emergency services and what we provided, but otherwise we are offering everything that we can. So let me see what else, if there's anything else. So the one thing I wanted to bring up, when we mentioned this to the library, I don't think it's as apparent to everybody else, but with the library, they have curbside services, so you can pick up your books there. So services have been reduced, but that has nothing to do with their budget being reduced. That has the fact that because of COVID and the health order, we're not allowed to do anything more than that. So it's not that the services are reduced because we don't have money right now. The services are reduced more because COVID's not allowing us to do anything. So honestly, as soon as the health regulations change and permit us to go full board, we're going to go as fast as we can in both the library, recreation, and childcare. And the faster we're able to go back to some kind of normalcy, the more likely we're going to sustain operations completely. So that is our hope. But events have been canceled. I think the only event on the book that I know of right now that's still hanging in there is the holiday parade and tree lighting at the end of the year. All other events have been canceled. We have no facility rentals other than our child care or camp programs that we're conducting inside our buildings, or anything outside that we're renting for space. So I know that's a lot of information. And I've been sending you our Friday memos that show all the different things that the Library and Recreation Department have been doing since the beginning. Everybody's working very, very hard in very different ways. But because all of our programs were shut down, they were all doing everything. And I'm very proud to, I'm gonna get all misty-eyed, but I'm very proud to have been their director during this time. I couldn't be prouder to watch people do stuff that they never have done before. You know, whether it's a testing site, meal program, meal distribution, working at the hotels to support those who are experiencing homelessness. I mean, everything you can imagine, rec and library staff are doing. So I'm sure you've read it in the paper about San Francisco and some other agencies too. I love what we do as a profession. And what I'm bragging about right now, you can find going on in every single agency in the state of California. They're incredible individuals. So that's enough of bragging. But
and we do thank you for everything that you've done. All of you, Catherine, Lindsay, Becky, Susan, really setting all this up. It's fabulous. My wife is so happy that the library's open again. And, really, we know you've really wearing many hats to keep up pretty much and keep things open. So we thank you for that.
Well, it's all the staff, and honestly, we have great leadership in this city. We really do. We have a city management office and a council that says basically, if it makes sense and you can do it, go. There's not a lot of bureaucracy in this agency. I've had the pleasure of experiencing different, but they understand that this is a crisis and people have needs, and whatever can be done as quickly as it can be done is happening. And it's happening in a very legal, safe way. City attorney is reviewing all kinds of stuff, and every single minute of every single day. So I couldn't be prouder of everybody. And I've only been able to accomplish this through everybody else. So it's a great city. It's really a great city. I guess that's why you all live here. So
I just wanted to echo what the director said. And again, the team at City Hall, whether it be the mayor and council, our city manager and directors, have all really dug deep to make this very successful. And I think we've set an example for many of the other jurisdictions in the county. I did have one question about baseball at Alberts. I've noticed baseball in the evening over there. Is that Marin Academy practicing or playing at Alberts?
We have a few different groups that are doing summer camps at Albert. So those are all summer camps.
In the evening?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It seemed uniforms, it seemed quite organized, and it seemed a step beyond summer camps. I thought it might have been Marin Academy or an actual team.
No, summer camps are the only organized sports that are allowed to happen right now. So, I mean, I think basically the idea is that it has to be the same group of 12 individuals together for 3 weeks, and they can't be participating in any other activities. So so teams are kind of getting around you know, instead of doing practices, they're doing camps. So they're committing to 3 weeks, the same group. The instructors can only be working with that one same group, and they're just organizing themselves that way.
Sounds very limiting, but at the same time, the kids are having a chance to play ball. And for the director, anything happening with the Pacifics this summer?
Nope, not at this point. They can't come back and practice or play. So unless they want to have an adult camp, they really can't. They can't do anything because you can't play against other people. So there's really no point. But then they're also not having to pay for rent. So we're actually really thrilled that the camps are in there using our stadium, and there might be a few churches that are desiring of having their outdoor services in the bleachers.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, I'm telling you, whatever, if we can do it, we're gonna do it.
Thank you, Director.
I have a question before we finish, please.
Sure.
So obviously, any decisions on budget cuts for next fiscal are going to be contingent upon how big your revenue hole ends up being this fiscal. So can you speak to what the mindset of your discussions with Jim and or the finance director in the intention of freezing the hiring of 2 major management level positions that, at least in my mind, would be pretty important in generating that revenue. While obviously I see the intention of saving the money as a whole for their salaries, when the charge is to generate that revenue, it essentially seems like city management is tying your hands behind your back and asking you to crochet them a sweater. So can you speak to how that is going to impact your ability to generate that revenue to avoid those budget cuts next fiscal? You just muted yourself.
I didn't realize I was already on. Sorry about that. So it's a little tricky. The two individuals that left, we knew Brian was going to retire and his position was not going to be replaced. We already knew that. And all of those job duties will be reallocated to different departments that can support it, like it's done in other cities. So that position's already kind of being addressed. There will still be some funding that'll be necessary to support some of those things that he used to do, like setting up barricades and stuff, but obviously it will be done in a very different way. With Ashley's position, Ashley was a manager over at Falkirk that when she left, we knew that position wasn't going to be replaced before COVID. We knew we were going to probably replace it with a different position. At this time, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to replace it with that position yet. However, the city's finance director and city manager has said with every single case, if we go back to them, depending on what the vacancy is, and we can illustrate to them that it brings in revenue, and that's kind of why they've waited, they will consider bringing a position back on. So it's not an absolute. They're leaving, so they're frozen now because we don't need those positions right now. But in the future, if we should open up and things become necessary, and we can illustrate that those positions recoup their costs, then we would move forward. So it's not an absolute no.
And
but we might feel them differently.
Was the additional $300K that was transferred into the recreation fund this fiscal rather, was that to offset revenue or projected revenue loss, or what was the mindset behind that?
So we always have a budget transfer from the general fund to augment the rec budget. So it was the combination. We didn't spend as much money as we thought, but we also didn't make as much money. So it was a little bit more, but the 300,000 that was transferred in, actually there's a lot more than 300,000, I believe, that's transferred in on an annual basis to the rec.
2 million, correct?
Yeah.
So that is essentially my question is, what was the additional 3 on top of that 2 million? And what was the intention of that to offset?
both, it was basically the revenue that didn't come in because
Okay.
our expenses were lower.
Got it.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was just the recreation side. It was not childcare.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I will keep you up to date as we receive more information, but at this point, we're going to probably be meeting on a more regular basis, I'm hoping. And so some of this information will be a little bit more timely, but honestly, if we had had this information where anything was going on, which you've seen in other cities, you'd have been notified a lot earlier than this. So we were shocked that we didn't get any type of severe budget cuts either, and we're very thankful.
Thanks for clarifying. Okay. Our next scheduled meeting is August 20th, and I believe that again will be Zoom unless otherwise notified. And we can adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Great to